every single day. I've never, ever worked so hard in my life. And I love Jim, but he was so tough on me. He could be really, really mean. Some days I didn't want to talk with him. I thought he was an asshole. And I say this lovingly because I know behind it all that he really did care for me, and he saw something in me. He saw the drive and the ambition and coming to work every single day, working my butt off, not accepting any pay, that it was going to pay dividends for me with whatever I did with horses. And so I worked for him for about 2 years, got another corporate job, was able to buy a pretty nice horse, and my goal with that horse was to get a world championship of reining. That's why I bought it. And I remembered all the things that he taught me. And I don't care what anybody says in the room, nobody could put a foundational training on a horse like Jim. And I see heads nodding because you know it's the truth. And I went to Texas the first year that I qualified, and I DQ'd. And I was just absolutely broken. And Jim encouraged me that, you know, you need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you need to try again. And so the next year I did try again. My parents told me they didn't think I should go because I wasn't ready to do it, but I knew I was. And so I went in the pen during a hellacious thunderstorm, and I did my pattern, and I placed first under all 5 judges, and I won that world championship.
Yay!
That is the point of the story.
All right. Well,
The very first phone call I made when that happened was to Jim. And I called him and I said, Jim, you were so tough on me, but I learned so much from you, and this victory today, it's all about you and what you taught me as a rider and how you had to learn how to lose to really appreciate the win. And he bawled like a baby. He bawled, I couldn't console him. And I just said, I am so eternally grateful for every single day that you made me work my butt off. You were mean to me because you taught me to be tough. You taught me to be a competitor, to have confidence in the pen, and you just really taught me how to ride. And I've always been grateful to him, always will be grateful to Jim for what he taught me. And I know he's listening to me, probably laughing or crying. Anyway, he just means the world to me, and a fantastic but very tough teacher.
tell us your name.
I guess I didn't, did I? I'm Kathleen Cooney.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
See you later, please. I'm going to be on the
I know. Nice to see you.
I've never met you. Have we met?
I don't think so. I know of you,
I know you.
but I knew your mom.
Okay, we'll talk here.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm going to try and get through this. Jim always tell me when I get stressed.
You're going to have to grab that microphone, honey. No, grab a hold of it. Take it out of the
I need my hands.
That's all right.
I need my hands to get through this.
You got it.
So, Jim used to tell me my brain squirts out of my ear when I get stressed, so I'm going to try and keep it in the middle. We met Jim in 1987. My mom, my sister, and I drew Linda Merrill. She was riding one of the horses that was on the Queen's Court for the Clark County Fair. And Linda was letting me use her little bay horse, I've been singing. And I was struggling with his Arabianness. So she brought us down to Jim, and he set us straight. And my mom the other day found notes that I wrote after taking lessons from Jim in 1987. It says Jim Gorman and Zinger. So, and this is the lesson about how a horse is a box and the lateral flexion exercise. So Jim had an impact on everybody he touched. Before I forget to say this, he was so proud of everyone that stuck with him his lessons were not for the faint of heart. It's perfect that I follow Kathleen. I don't know if I should share this.
Good.
At one
Go ahead.
Jim this is child abuse.
Oh, I can tell you about that.
At one point, I was having an issue leaning back when I was stopping my horse, and Jim was getting pissed. He'd had enough, and he says, "Come here, right now." Takes a piece of baling twine, ties it around my neck, and tied the other end to the saddle horn, and walks off, and he said, "Don't lean back." He walks off, and he turns around, and he looked at me and goes, "Oh yeah, and don't fall off." So needless to say, I rode around for the next half hour like this. I haven't leaned back since, in my mind, but he had an impact. And I remember we rode with Zinger for a while, and then we faded off, and then we found our way back to Jim when he was at P Ranch. And I'd been riding with a pleasure trainer, doing silly stuff with my hands. And he took me aside one day, and he said, "Hold this snaffle bit in your hand, hold it softly." And he goes, and then he took that rein, he just yanked it hard. He goes, what did you do? Your hand closed up and you got hard. He goes, "We don't want that. We don't want resistance. We want softness. You got to learn how to create softness and get a horse to work with you. And the lighter cues, the diminishing cues." And he says, "Hold that hand, hold that bit again in your hand. Hold it softly." And he picked that rein up and he wiggled it and played with it. He goes, "You have to ask a question with your reins. Ask it softly, and you will create softness. Don't want resistance. It's not what we want." And I have never forgotten that lesson. I bawled my eyes out all the way home. Every horse that I picked up aggressively with my hands, not thinking about the effect that I was having, the conversation I was having with them, it had an effect. It meant so much to so many people, but he was not for the faint of heart. I spent last night writing a bunch of stuff. It could be a mini novel at this point. But the one thing that I was kind of surprised that Dawn and Andy didn't know, I didn't know about the Hollywood stuff. Maybe I heard it, maybe I hadn't. But after I had to sell my horses because of medical issues, and so I would come and pick Jim up from Dawn and Joe's, and we'd go have lunch, and then we'd talk about horses. And he knew I was getting interested in Domo Vaquero, working equitation. He told me a story one day. This is after knowing him for over 20 years. He said, so at one point in his life, he wanted to go and ride at the Spanish riding school in Vienna. So he wrote a letter to Colonel Podowski, the director of the Spanish riding school in Vienna. So Podowski wrote him back. Jim has a handwritten letter from Colonel Podowski. So those of you who don't know Lippes Honor history, Colonel Podowski was the director of the Spanish riding school in Vienna during the Nazi occupation. He saved Lippes Honor horses, as some of the Polish horses from the Wojtes too, from the Polish stud in Hostow. They saved, Patton worked with Podowski to save these horses. And because the Russians were coming south and they would have butchered them for horse meat. So Jim met him. Podowski made an appointment with Jim in California and sat with him and talked horse. And I wrote this stuff down after having lunch with Jim. And he said Podowski was the most genteel man he'd ever met. And he was also the most highly intelligent man when it came to talking about horse training. And I was like, this is a big deal. And I've known you for 20 years and I've just known this. I said, this is huge. He goes, it's not, this is huge. I'm starstruck at this point. So, but these lunches, at one of these lunches that I had with him, I told him one day, I said, you do realize to the students that stuck with you, you did brain damage, right? And he snorted. He chuckled, and that grin, the Irish grin that he had. And I can't say enough about that time. It was nice having time away from him, or away from the barn with him, to have more open conversations without horses there to distract you, but just to hear some of his history. The lessons were hard, the tears were many, but you worked. I had a little bay paint horse that he helped me start around the flag. And I was living with Bob and Sue, and I'd get off work and I'd go down and get her from the lower barn, hop on her with a halter, and we'd go walking up there, loose halter lead. She's just swinging her head, and Jim always said, that little mare is so cute. She's just enjoying life, and she's swinging her head, and she's having fun, looking forward to going to work. So we started her on the flag, and she was fabulous. And she's not a cutter, she was a halter-bred horse, Skipper Debbie, but she loved working that flag. At one point, she got a hold of that flag, and she shook it like a dog, like a pit bull's gonna shake a chihuahua, and squealing, and Jim's behind me, losing his shit. Sorry, Padre. And he's like, savaging's not good, but goddamn, that's hilarious. And it just, but the things that I have in my head that he would say, you know, I got it. Use your feet. Don't lean back. Wiggle your feet, wiggle your toes. Pinch with your spurs. Pet that horse. Step down and pet that horse. But when you had a good work and it was quiet behind you and you're still scared, and he'd say, step down, pet that horse. And you turn around and he's there giving you that handshake. And there's no feeling like that. And then a couple of days later, you'd screw up and you'd start all over again. But I remember learning the snuff of it was a big deal. There's a lot to learn in that, apparently. And Mary Ann Berg was out there, and Mary Ann says to me one day, she's like, I want to learn the Bozalda dance. I was like, oh my God. Do me a favor and wait until I'm out in the arena, because I got no interest today. So I saddle my horse and get a bridle on her, and I get as far out in that pen as I can away from the tack room. 10 minutes later, here he comes, holding Bozal bridle. And so I had to endure the lesson. And I don't even remember the lesson. I just remember trying to hide. But he was phenomenal. And I haven't gone on to show. We've gotten involved in the Mustang thing, and I'm looking forward to putting some time on those guys. But I wouldn't be the horse person I am without him. And I will forever hear, and Don and I talked about this the other day, use your left, no, your other left. It's always the phrase I'm going to hear.
That's the PG version. It was your other effing left.
It was a lot. But Jim definitely had an impact, and he was so proud of the people that he turned out. And I was talking earlier with Wayne and Tori, Nate Smith was coming ride with Jim. Is Nate back there?
Yep. Yeah, you may.
Oh, hi Nate. Hi Jeannie. Us girls used to listen to Nate's lessons and think, God, why is he so easy on Nate? He always got the brunt of it, but it was because, well, and not, Nate's been really successful, but he took it personal. He had skin in the game when he was teaching you, and he took it very personal that you were successful and that you did well. And I can't be any more grateful for him. I can't believe I'm having this conversation. But he's one of those people that you think he's always going to be there. He's going to live immortal because he's going to be on each shoulder, the little devil, the little angel, telling you how to ride your horse. So, for that, I'm grateful. Oh, and he also, Padre, taught me how to cross myself. And I don't know if this is how they teach at Catholic school. This is not the PG version, Jim would walk down the aisle and he would go like this, and I said, how do you remember if it's left or right first? And he goes, spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch. And I have never forgotten.
Spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch.
That was so good. What makes so fucking fascinating now.
I got one more, Joe.
And your sister's here? I was trying to find your name on Facebook to see if you got a
Yeah.
message that this was happening.
One on hand.
Gotta get nice. Close.
I'm Barbara Kraft. My marriage cousin. A little bit closer.
Why don't you grab a hold, take it off your stand.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. We're hearing all the stories about Jim, the tough guy he was, and
You gotta introduce yourself, tell who you are and how you're related.
again.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Barbara Krask, and my husband Russell was Jim's cousin. There was another cousin, Merle, and Russ and Merle made Jim the man he is today. Because the toughness came from Russ and Merle. There's a story told
Yeah.
that on the farm, when little Jimmy, they called him always, little Jimmy, that's all I ever knew him by. And Merle and Russ decided that they were going to make a man out of him. Because he came from the city, you know. So they took him out to the barn, and they had some hammer and nails. And on the big barn door, they nailed Jimmy.
Held his shirt to the door. Couldn't get in trouble.
They must have had probably 8 or 10 nails in his clothes. He couldn't get out of them, he couldn't get off the wall. I've often thought of that story. They did a lot of things, mean things to little Jimmy because they were going to make a man out of him. Well, they did, didn't they? They did. He had to struggle with these cousins all his life. And he learned how to be a man. I think they sometimes did these things, maybe not so much for Jimmy, or just to be mean to Jimmy, but they loved to hear his mother when she would come out. Now, if any of you knew his mother, she always talked with her teeth closed. You know, when she would talk, she'd talk with her teeth closed. A beautiful woman. I loved her. But they loved to hear her come out there when she was mad because she could not unclench her teeth. Her little Jimmy was being, you know, mistreated. She loved him. Naturally, all mothers love their son. But that story has always stuck with me. And I asked Madge one day, is it the truth? Did they really do that? And the old teeth clenched. She says, they certainly did. So sometimes we need some fun little stories. It kind of helps to hear things about when Cowboy Jim was a little kid. It kind of helps.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was wonderful.
I love hearing your stories about the Jim part that I didn't know at that age, and with all the amazing stuff he did. My name's Dorothy Krask Wilgus, and I am Barbara's daughter, and Jim was my second cousin. And the farm she's talking about, my grandparents had a dairy farm in Eatonville, and a great big old barn, hay barn. It was 2-story, and the mean bulls and stallions were down in the bottom pen. And you don't go there. Okay, you don't go there. We were always told you don't go there. And I love your stories about, I could relate. I totally could relate in how they teach, because my dad, guess what? Same way, okay? By the way, when my dad passed away, Jim came to my dad's funeral, or memorial service, and the stories I heard from him about my dad, I couldn't believe that was ever my dad. But he didn't hold anything back, did he, Ann?
No.
Okay, well, the part I remember, I was just a little kid, and we were out in that 2-story hay barn, which we loved to be in, because there was loose hay and baled hay, and a great big doorway that drops down, because it's 2nd story. Okay, and I remember Dad would be hauling the hay up, the conveyor would go way, way up to get the hay up in the barn. We'd be playing up there. We were just little kids at the time. And Grandma and Grandpa told us not to play in the barn when there was not very much hay in there, because the floor was so slick. And you all know, when you go dragging hay bales across a wood floor for years and years, is the floor slick? Oh yeah. Yeah, you could dance on that all night long, right? Okay, so we would love to get this great big rope that was stuck up in a track to pull the conveyor in and out of the barn. We would get a hold of that big rope and get on one end, grab it and jump off the hay and go sliding, and that's when Grandma would have a fit, because you're going to go right out that barn door and kill yourself, you know? And so we were out there and we're talking, we're going to do this again, and we said, but how will we stop? And Jim says to us, don't worry, I got a lasso. Okay. So he was going to lasso us if that was what was going on. But anyway, that's about all I remember, except I remember seeing him and being at awe. He was the tall, dark, handsome cousin that we didn't know. Okay? But we'd see him come onto the farm and hear Aunt Madge, like this Aunt Madge. She's quite an artist, by the way. Really amazing artist. Anyway, and she and Uncle Ed were so very proud of Jim. And I remember them telling stories about when he started going to university. And it's as if he was the first human being that ever got to go to university. Okay, it was just amazing. I didn't see Jim much after that time as I grew up, but I would hear stories. And so I love the history that you put out on the paper, because that helped me understand why we seldom ever saw him, because he was in 25 states, right? Or 25 years, yeah, he was all over the world training horses. And my condolences to you that got to be trained by Jim, okay? My condolences. And also at the same time, how fortunate we all were and we survived, right? I wasn't trained by him, but I was trained by my father, and he trained Jim. So, and also in the music world with a music coach that trained just like Jim. Yeah, you thought you were beat to pieces, but it paid off, right? Okay. So blessings to all of you. Thank you, and I pray that you just share the goodness and the kindness and the knowledge that you gained from him, but especially the camaraderie that you have together in the horse world and beyond. And blessings to you, Uncle Jim.
So I normally don't do this, but I can't not. So I'm Dawn Thompson, and I met Jim when I was very young. I was getting lessons from his wife Astrid down the road. I would lead my horse down the road because we didn't have a horse trailer or anything like that. We loaded our horses up in the back of a pickup truck, and if I couldn't, I think I had to ride to the local fair here and down in Washougal when I was a kid several times. We'd have to start out 2 hours early to get there. No trailers. And anyway, I was getting lessons from his wife, and she was a very accomplished English writer. She was the new trainer at the big barn down the road, one of the only indoor arenas that was here in Clark County at the time. And they would let me ride for free in their arena. They never charged me because I was the little girl up the road that didn't have much but a scraggly old pony, or later I had a $75 horse that my dad bought for me and was training it myself. So Astrid was helping me with this horse. And then I bought another horse. I saved all my money and bought another horse. And he was a little bit, he was a nice quarter horse because I had a half Arab, and showing in 4-H, the Arabs, you just got overlooked. So I was like, got my big idea, I'm gonna get a quarter horse. And I bought my first horse, and I started having trouble with it. And Astrid could not help me get beyond this point. And I think from that, it was about the ages of 14 when I started, and then 16 I started driving, and I got this new horse, and I would, we finally got a horse trailer, a 2-horse trailer. Actually, it was my sister's, but I could borrow it. And I was driving my dad's Ford stick shift pickup, and I would go to my lesson, and I would clean Astrid's and Jim's house for 4 hours for a 1-hour lesson. And then Jim was training at the barn next to the place they lived, but he was not training in the same barn as Astrid. So I started having problems with my horse, and she goes, well, go in there and talk to him. She'd tell me, come later and clean. So when he got home, he'd sit in front of the chair and watch his news and read his paper and stuff. And she'd go tell him what's going on with your horse, and maybe he'll give you a lesson. He doesn't give lessons. And I said, okay, and I didn't know anything really about him other than the cowboy that would come in, dirty boots, and just that I had to clean up. Anyway, so I would start talking to him. Well, he wouldn't talk horses until I answered what I was learning in school, how I was doing, what I learned today, and then he would say, okay, all right, yeah, bring your horse over. Bring it over tomorrow or whatever. So the first lessons I ever got from Jim was I would drive to his place. Now this is not the same place that I was going to ride before. So I had a ways to go, and I was pulling this horse trailer. I was 16, and I could not back up. I didn't know how, so I would just pull in, and then by the time I go home, he'd turn me around, and we'd load my horse back up, and I'd drive back home the other way. And then finally he taught me how to back up, and he is the one that taught me how to back horse trailer. But anyway, when Tony says that it was like I felt like I was in boot camp, drill sergeant 109. I mean, like we'd start in the morning at 7 o'clock, he'd say, be here. We would feed or clean stalls, and then go to breakfast, tie horses up, come back, then ride a little, then you'd go to lunch, then you would come back, but you were cleaning stalls at least 3 times a day, working your butt off, and then riding on top of it. By the end of the 2 weeks, I had blisters on my insides of my legs. Of course, I didn't talk about it, and I was tough as nails, so I wanted to learn so bad that I stuck it out. And the end of the week, he yelled at me so bad. By the end of that second week, I finally lost it. I had held it together the whole time, and I was like, I just let it go, and I was bawling up a storm. And he felt so bad, because he did have this soft side that he just, and like Tony said, he broke down. He told me, I just am so hard on you because you're really good, and you're going to be really good. And he said, I wouldn't, if you weren't that good, I wouldn't care. And he meant it. He meant it, because he didn't give lessons, and he wouldn't have stuck it out. He didn't ever charge me anything. Later, when I could afford to pay and send him a horse to ride, I did. And those were the best horses I've ever ridden. They had a Jim Gorman handle on them that is like no other. He did put the softest touch on a horse. I used to ride Linda's Arabian that she talked about earlier, her stallion, he wouldn't just let anybody ride any of his horses either. You had to grab